Looking back to 1960, the WP was suddenly confronted with the SP buying large amounts of their stock. SP formally requested to take control of the WP through the Interstate Commerce Commission. The WP was determined to remain independent, and it certainly didn't want to become part of the SP. To a person, the people at WP were proud of what they had accomplished over the years, and public support was clearly on their side on this one. With cooperation at some level, the Santa Fe purchased similar shares of WP stock, and this fortunately threw the whole merger issue into a stalemate. The only resolution now was no merger. The only question was how long WP could remain independent, since things in the industry pointed toward more consolidation, not less. The Western Pacific had been very conservative in diesel locomotive choices. It couldn't afford to be experimental and possibly make bad purchases. Standardization was preferred. Untempted by Alco, Baldwin, and FM over the years, road power had been all EMD with 4 axles and no turbocharging. Steam had been vanquished with mostly cab-style F units. The old FTs were well worn and not worth rebuilding. The newer F7s would gradually be replaced too. Eventually, nearly all the F units were traded in for more modern power. As finances allowed, groups of them were sent to EMD to become Jeep 20s, 35s, and 40s. By 1975, WP was down to a mere 6 F units. This pair on a work train near Greenville on the High Line will come to a stop. The smoking traction motor spells trouble, and soon 2 more F units were sidelined, leaving only 4 active. We'll see those remaining 4 later on. They were eventually refurbished and used on the San Jose turn until the merger with the Union Pacific. WP could have bought more horsepower for less money by shopping at Alco, but it would remain an all-EMD camp until 1967, when they brought in GE's U30Bs. The Jeep 7 and 9 models brought in from 1952 to 1955 served as the model for future road power. Equally conservative EMD finally came out with turbocharged and 4-axle road power when they introduced the 2,000 horsepower Jeep 20 in 1959. These were EMD's first Jeep 20s sold, still using the high nose. Let's go to Greenville, California on the WP's High Line to see a pair of Jeep 20s on a local. The High Line was built in the 30s from Keddie to Bieber, California, where the Great Northern was met. This line allowed traffic to run all the way to Stockton, California, where trains were handed over to the Santa Fe for points south. This arrangement allowed cutting into SP's north-south monopoly. The Perlman green paint was named after Alfred E. Perlman. He came to the WP after working as president of the huge New York Central system from 1954 to the Penn Central merger days. He had helped modernize much of the ailing New York Central, and it was in much better shape than the Pennsy when the merger hit. When Perlman came to the Central, it had a 4-track main line that seemed more interested in passenger trains than making money from fast freight, other than the pacemaker service. He gradually modernized the signaling system and brought freight service up to competitive speeds. He proved that a 2-track CTC railroad was more productive than a 4-track conventional line. He never was keen on passenger service. His crystal ball was a bit clearer than his contemporaries on that one. The combined roads made a fast slide into disaster that would bring congressional investigations and a costly bailout. Perlman left the Penn Central. Before the New York Central, Perlman had run the Rio Grande, and he had done a good job bringing it into a competitive posture with centralized track control and faster, shorter trains. When he stepped into the Western Pacific, he had the experience and the right size railroad to turn things around quickly. It was during a recessionary period, and the WP had been losing money after a long period of making a fair profit under former President Christie. It was Perlman's fortune that the WP wasn't in that bad of shape either. In 4 months' time, he put it back in the black, and WP kept it that way until the end. When Perlman came on board, he brought Robert Flannery with him, also from the New York Central days. Flannery assumed the role as president in 1973. Perlman became the chairman of the board. Much of the credit for the 70s goes to Flannery and his leadership, too. Perlman was a down-to-business leader that had mellowed somewhat before he started at the Western Pacific. Changes came so fast that many employees feared for their jobs at times. In fact, some were let go. It was all unfortunate downsizing for efficiency's sake. The WP began to spend money on customized service brought by better marketing. Higher prices per ton could be charged in that way. The old way was to hope to move as much tonnage as possible, but much of that was at lower bulk rates using slower, longer trains with more locomotives and higher crew costs from longer transit times. Speed and efficiency was important, since WP had 146 miles of extra track than rival SP between Salt Lake City and Oakland. The Nevada desert was a place for running freight trains up to 65 miles an hour in modern times. Most of the grades were long but easy 0.4% stretches. The highest point on the WP main line was near Shafter, Nevada, at nearly 6,000 feet. During World War I, the USRA ordered the WP and the SP to pair their Winnemucca to Wells lines to form a paired track arrangement. After the war, the relationship continued, since it worked well for both roads. Long ago in the 20s, the WP's president was on the fast mail train out on the paired track line, and he was embarrassed by an SP cattle train passing them up. Once Arthur James took control in 1926, he began WP's long climb into a Class I success, ending future embarrassments. Flanagan is on the western end of the barren Nevada desert. It offered fresh air and fast WP trains where you could see the whole train stretched out. Flanagan also was a connection for SP trains coming down from its Modoc line heading east. The SP tracks once crossed the WP and continued to the SP line to the south. SP had trackage rights to use the WP line east to the paired track territory, saving time and mileage. The SP trains came down from Klamath Falls, Oregon, much like WP's own Inside Gateway line, but the traffic was all headed east. WP's gateway traffic was mostly heading south to connections with the Santa Fe. On the WP, Perlman set many things into motion to make the railroad run more efficiently and support customers that needed deliveries just in time to reduce the cost of parts inventory. The WP had Ford as one very good example of this. Parts shipped from all over the East were sent to the Milpitas, California automobile plant with dependability. With just-in-time inventory, late trains meant assembly lines being shut down, a situation to be avoided. The Ford plant was built in the 50s on former Western Pacific land. WP worked with industries to help locate many new plants, and with the promise and delivery of customized service over the years. Let's see what it was like to wait at Flanagan to watch a Western Pacific freight pour on the speed.